Have you ever thought, if I just switch jobs, all the stress will go away? I know I did. When I was burned out, I thought for sure a new job was the cure. But what happened? The burnout followed me. And you know what? It came back even stronger than ever. In this video, I'm going to share how to prevent burnout from following you into a new job. The truth is, a new job will not and cannot cure burnout alone. And if you don't know why, you could end up repeating the same exhausting cycle over and over again. So let's talk about it. When I was burned out, I thought for sure the answer was a new job. I told myself if I switch companies, everything will get better. And I think a lot of people feel that way. At first, it seemed like the right move. Fresh start, new team, new projects. It felt exciting. But what many people forget and don't realize, including myself at the time, is that starting in a new role, especially at a new company, it means rebuilding, proving yourself, establishing that credibility, working twice as hard to earn that reputation. And that is a huge amount of pressure on top of the stress that you were already carrying that you thought was gone, but it's still lingering in your body. So I had taken on a new job. Fast forward 2 years in, the burnout came back. And this time it hit me even harder. I got physically sick. And I'm not talking about the type of sick where it goes away in a couple of days, like the common cold or a stomach bug, although it did show up and affect my stomach. And I'm not talking about the type of stomach pains that would go away in a couple of days with rest. It was severe. I had not changed my diet or anything. The doctors couldn't give me any explanation. And it was type of stomach pain where I couldn't hold anything down. So of course, that made me lose my appetite completely. I also was so exhausted. And again, not the type of exhaustion where you can sleep in over the weekends or take a few days off and feel re-energized. I literally had to drag myself out of bed and felt a sense of depression and hopelessness. And at first I thought, well, if I leave this company, maybe it's the company, if I leave this company, things will get better. But I was so exhausted, I couldn't even imagine going in for interviews. For all of you who are actively interviewing, you know that finding work is like a full-time job in itself. So I couldn't imagine going in for interviews, let alone interview well. And then I even considered taking a leave of absence, but I've taken time off at this company. And upon return, I feel exactly the same way. Nothing changes. So I decided to leave my job. It was a very difficult decision for me, but I did. And fortunately, I had enough money set aside to take a break. And that was when I realized that it's not just the job. It's something deeper. Sure, the job triggered it, but there was something more. I started to look at my own patterns, and there was a common denominator, and that was me. Now, I know what you're going to say. Emily, you can't possibly tell me that the toxic work environment, the workload, my manager has nothing to do with my burnout. I'm not saying that. Of course, those were triggers. But there was a deeper issue. And I started looking at myself and the patterns that I carried from role to role. You see, my identity was tied to my job. It always had been. I always thought it's the great work ethic that I have. But when you tie your identity to your job and to the achievement, that becomes a problem. The coping strategies that I leaned on that no longer served me, and the minimal or lack of boundaries that I had. So those things, they didn't magically disappear when I changed companies. They came with me. And that's when it clicked. A new job alone will not and cannot cure burnout. If you don't address the deeper patterns, the way you define yourself, boundaries you set, and the habits you rely on, you'll just recreate the same cycle in your next role. I'm not saying don't ever change jobs. Sometimes it's the right move. But if you decide to change jobs, I want you to go in with your eyes open. Know that you'll need to rebuild, and that if you don't take the time to work on yourself, the burnout will follow you. Burnout is an internal and external challenge. A job change may reduce the surface level stressors, but if the underlying habits, beliefs, or boundaries stay the same, burnout eventually returns. Here are some practical tips to prevent burnout from following you in the next role. Pause before you run. Take the time to reflect on what led to the burnout. Was it a lack of boundaries? Was it over-identifying yourself with your job? Redefine success. Check whether achievement is sustainable. Ask yourself, am I chasing external validation? Is this truly what I want? Set boundaries early. It's easier to set them at the start of a new role than to undo overcommitment later on. I hear it so often that people overcommit and then they have to retract on their word and explain why they can no longer do the work, participate in the meeting, whatever it may be. And the anxiety and stress as they prepare for this conversation is overwhelming. It's not necessary. It's easier to say no initially if you know that you can't take on the additional work or you cannot attend that meeting. Build micro restorative habits. When you have the time to take a break, don't immediately go to your phone and start scrolling. Take a restorative break, which means go for a walk, break away from the screens. All these things, they help regulate your nervous system. And last but not least, seek support from mentors, coaches, peer groups, or communities such as this one that will help support you and keep you accountable. So if you're thinking about leaving your job because of burnout, I want you to pause for a moment. I'm not telling you not to change jobs. A new role might feel like it's a solution right now because anything is better than your current situation. But unless you address the deeper patterns, such as how you cope with stress, the boundaries you set, and how much your identity is tied to work, burnout will eventually catch up with you. Please take care of yourself. If this resonates, please like and subscribe to help the channel grow and get the message out there. If you found this content to be insightful, please drop a heart emoji in the comments below so I know what kind of videos to make in the future. Thanks for being in this space, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.